Google firing dozens of employees, but the reason may surprise you. Stay tuned here, coming up on Business Matters. All right, let's start with US stocks as usual. Just real quick, Wall Street closed nearly unchanged today. Investors right now still digesting through the latest corporate earnings. S&P 500 saw its fifth straight session of declines, which includes today. But don't be surprised if we go through a period of decline in stocks right now, but also keep in mind that some are in oversold territory. Oil prices as well today held near a 3-week low. Investors right now weighing a number of things in that sector, including robust U.S. job data, sanctions on Venezuela and Iran. Of course, on the other side of the coin, there's global demand concerns and as well as easing tensions in the Middle East. All right, moving on to Google here. More than a dozen employees let go over a protest against the company's business ties to the Israeli government. So Google said it has terminated 28 employees for participating in a demonstration against the deal. It says a small number of protesting employees entered and disrupted work at a few office locations. The company also says that the behavior violated its policy and was unacceptable. And the workers were protesting over a $1.2 billion contract between Google and the Israeli government, as well as its military. Amazon also part of the deal, by the way. The protesting group says that the deal supports the development of military tools by the Israeli government, but Google maintained that the contract is not directed at highly sensitive classified or military workloads relevant to weapons or intelligence services. The group said that the organized protest, they called it a flagrant act of retaliation in response to the termination. Tesla shares, let me mention as well, fell to their lowest in more than a year, as you can see here today. This comes after Deutsche Bank raised concerns over the electric automaker's autonomous vehicle products. Now, the company's shares fell after the brokerage downgraded the stock to hold. It didn't help as well that earlier this month, Tesla decided to cancel its long-promised inexpensive car that investors would hoped would drive growth. And some laid-off Tesla employees should be expecting more money. This is as CNBC reporting that CEO Elon Musk sent out an internal email to staff that read in part, quote, "Some severance packages are incorrectly low." So Musk apologized and said this is being corrected immediately. And the electric vehicle maker announced on Monday as well that it would be slashing more than 10% of its global workforce, or about 14,000 people. This comes as the company reported its first drop in year-over-year deliveries since the start of the pandemic. Tesla as well is set to discuss its first quarter results with shareholders next week. We'll have more for you on that. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. So it seems like the rise of this is bringing TSMC along for the ride in a good way, that is. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is forecasting that its second quarter sales may rise as much as 30%. So the world's largest chip maker is seeing a strong demand for advanced chips. The CEO, C.C. Wei, said that the shift from traditional servers to AI servers is favorable to the company. That's being offset a little bit here by sluggish demand for smartphones and auto chips. But nevertheless, the company expects its revenue to rise between 20 to 25% this year. And first quarter profits already beat market expectations. And net profits as well came in around $7 billion. TSMC is Asia's most valuable listed company. Apple Singapore campus getting a makeover. The tech giant has announced plans to invest more than $250 million to expand operations in Ang Mo Kio. Part of the project will include major updates to 2 buildings across from Apple's existing offices, and those buildings were acquired 2 years ago. Apple opened its first facility in Singapore in 1981 with 72 employees. Right now, it employs more than 3,600 and has become the operations center for Apple in the region. Bloomberg reports that CEO Tim Cook will head to Singapore this week to meet with its prime minister and other leaders. The Biden administration reaching an agreement to provide $6.1 billion in government support for Micron technology, and this is to help produce advanced memory computer chips in New York and Idaho. Let's go to NTD's Sean Marshall now for more.
Memory chip maker Micron Technologies is getting $6.1 billion in government support. It's to produce advanced computer chips in New York and Idaho. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made the announcement Thursday. He personally worked with Micron to build what would ultimately be a set of 4 chip factories near Syracuse. Senator Schumer said this last year when announcing regional tech hubs.
This announcement means one thing: more good-paying, long-lasting jobs are coming to upstate New York, an area that's seen so many companies leave over the last 3-4 decades.
Funding comes from the 2022 CHIPS and Science Act. Major chips companies, including Intel, TSMC, Samsung, and GlobalFoundries, are set to receive billions of dollars from the bill to build new facilities and expand existing ones in the United States. The Biden administration has set a goal for 20% of the world's advanced chips to be made in the United States and has restricted the flow of chips into China. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has mentioned in the past a want for American-built tech as a security concern.
That is the national security that we have to stand up against. That's why we must manufacture these right here in America. And what better place than in New York?
Including the government support, Micron plans to invest $100 billion in upstate New York over the next 2 decades. Investment would lead to an estimated 9,000 direct jobs and 40,000 construction jobs. Micron has also announced plans for a $15 billion memory chip plant in its hometown of Boise, Idaho. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Thanks for that report, Sean. Let's now turn to the conflict in the Middle East. The U.S. and U.K. have imposed fresh sanctions on Iran, and this is over concerns about the recent attack on Israel and the potential for escalated conflict in the Middle East at the same time as well. The Treasury Department targeted 16 people and 2 entities in Iran, and they were involved in the production of drone engines used in the attack on Israel. Now, the UK also targeting Iranian military organizations and individuals connected to Iran's drone and ballistic missile industries. Now, President Biden's pause on liquefied natural gas exports in the spotlight yet again. Lawmakers grilling the Department of Energy in a congressional hearing today. NTD's Virginia Gibson has more on that hearing.
House Republicans grilled Department of Energy official Brad Crabtree Thursday over Biden's temporary ban on liquefied natural gas exports. Biden enacted the ban earlier this year, pausing all pending decisions on exports to non-free trade agreement countries.
This administration's pause has caused a great alarm and uncertainty, particularly with our European allies.
Republican lawmaker Pat Fallon says countries around the world need America's natural gas. The U.S. is the world's largest exporter. Here's Rep. Fallon's exchange with the Energy Department official.
It doesn't affect allies in terms of near to medium term energy security supply because we're going to be doubling our export capacity by 2030. They are not alarmed. We have briefed our allies extensively.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Because I've spoken with our some of our allies, and they are very alarmed.
Department of Energy official Brad Crabtree says the ban doesn't stop current LNG exports. But Republican lawmaker Mike Waltz says other countries are making industry decisions to move away from the U.S. based on Biden's signals.
They said, we're trying to get off. You guys are beating us up for buying Russian gas. Where's North American gas? Where's it going to be in the next 5-10 years? What's going to happen if President Biden gets reelected?
Waltz pointed out that Russia still sells significant amounts of liquefied natural gas, one way that it obtains funds that help it wage war against Ukraine.
If we drop the price of global oil and gas below a certain point, Russia's done, Mr. Secretary. And that, for that matter, Iran is done. And yet we're literally spending against ourselves as they're selling just as much as they ever did.
Republicans brought this up in an election year, implying the ban has political purposes. Crabtree did not directly respond. The United States presidential election starts November 5th, 6.5 months from now. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
And the dollar's dominance is holding its ground. A new report by Morgan Stanley says the US dollar's dominant reserve currency status is likely to endure here. So the firm noted that the dollar's influence in the global economy remains strong. This week, the dollar hit 34-year highs against the yen and 5-month peaks against the euro. The dollar has been tested in recent years through, with its rivalry with China, wrangling Washington's debt ceiling, and more, just to list a few. But the most talked about alternative, the Chinese yuan, has fallen short as a credible challenge. The firm expects only a moderate and gradual decline in the dollar's use internationally. And regarding this topic, I wanted more discussion because, whenever it comes up, there's always a lot of attention on it. So I invited senior analyst at FX Street, Joseph Trevisani. Hear his thoughts on the subject. Thank you very much for being here today again, Joseph. Always great to chat with you. So we're talking about the dollar today because Morgan Stanley released a report saying that to them, the dollar being as the reserve currency is going to stay that way for a while. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I mean, why can't the world just move away from the dollar?
Thank you for having me. The biggest problem, probably twofold. One is that there really isn't any alternative. If you look at the last transition from a different reserve currency, which was the British pound, the United States as a major world power, as a major economy, was waiting to take over the stage. There is nothing now that can replace the dollar, either as far as trust goes, accessibility, legal status, or size of market.
What about gold? We're seeing central banks stock up on gold right now. Can't we go back to a gold standard and then potentially move away from the dollar to gold?
Well, there are a couple of problems with gold. One is there's not a whole lot of it, and there's not really enough of it to support the idea of gold-backed currencies. The world is also very used to a floating rate. It's been more than 50 years now. So I don't think gold is really an alternative as a basis for the global economy.
So in that Morgan Stanley report, they mentioned the Chinese yuan, saying that it's the most talked about alternative. And we know that China's economy is second to the U.S. And some argue that potentially one day China's economy could overtake the U.S. And wouldn't that be a potential substitute for the dollar if that day happens?
Well, as the China's economy may be second to the United States in size, but its position as far as trust and a custodian of assets is far, far behind the United States. I don't think any investors would trust their long-term plentiful reserves to the administrations of the Beijing government. In the United States, there is a legal system that the world respects and that you can find outlet for your grievances. I don't think anyone believes that about China.
What if China becomes the world's biggest economy with the military backing that up?
Yes.
Production happens, a lot of it actually in China, a lot of factories there. So it has some economic might there to sort of persuade people, if you will, to use their currency.
That is true. And, if the Chinese economy overtakes the United States, it becomes, and it is right now, in many cases, a greater consumer of resources on many types of resources in the United States. And that would, of course, put pressure on resource suppliers, and they would probably come from China to price and accept payment in yuan. Yuan is not, however, a floating currency. It's managed by the Chinese government, and it's tightly controlled by the Chinese government. So the idea that that would become a floating currency, a means of payment around the world, is certainly not anywhere on the horizon. An additional problem, of course, and one that I think might precipitate some sort of result that you're talking about would be a conflict, military conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan that the United States lost. I think that could be the event that might precipitate some sort of movement.
What about the euro, the European economy, and their government bonds? Is that a place where potentially compete with the U.S. Dollar and the Treasury?
It is, and I think it has. I think there has been movement to European bonds, but what you have to remember is there really isn't any European bond. They're national bonds. There's the German Bund, there's the UK gilt, which of course is not a member of the EU anymore, or the ECB, the French bonds. And once you go down from there, the economies and the national bond markets are smaller and smaller and smaller. If you had a euro-wide bond administered by the ECB, that might be a different story, but you don't. You still have the national markets.
All right, thank you very much for your time today, Joseph. Always great talking to you.
Always nice to be on. Thank you very much, Don.
Speaking of the dollar, coming up, Wall Street put billions of dollars of American retirement savings in over 5 dozen blacklisted Chinese companies. We'll tell you which U.S. companies did this. And Caitlin Clark's salary sparks gender pay debate. Are women getting paid less than men simply based on their gender? And TD's Dave Martin gives us insight after the break. Don't go away.
How'd it happen?
She showed up dead on arrival.
This never gets easier.
It does when you call CarShield before your car breaks down. Look at these prices. The camshaft, transmission, engine.
Don't people know? A plan through CarShield could protect up to 5,000 parts and systems.
You hate to see it.
An out-of-warranty car is gonna break down eventually.
Right, which is why they need a plan through CarShield. Those expensive repair bills get paid and at the mechanic of their choice. They're notifying the family.
Poor guy, he doesn't even know what's coming.
Another victim of senselessly expensive repair bills. Can't save them all.
But we can keep trying. Didn't have to end this way. If he'd have just called CarShield before his car broke down.
Exactly.
Protect yourself from the unprecedented rise in cost for parts and repairs. Call now to save money with your price lock guarantee. Call 800-429-5128.
Performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Coming to Lincoln Center, NJ Pack, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford, starting March 28th. Tickets at shenyun.com.
Does shopping for bladder control products have you feeling like you need someone to be on the lookout for you? Now you have your privacy back. We're HDIS, and we home deliver bladder control products directly to you. We're always on the lookout for you. You get free shipping in plain, unmarked boxes. So your private matters, stay private. We understand how you feel. For over 35 years, we've delivered bladder control products to millions of Americans, just like you. You don't have to worry about incontinence any longer. Call now for your free product sample pack and over $45 in money-saving coupons. At HDIS, we're always in stock. We carry all brands in hundreds of styles and sizes. You'll be sure to get what you need, guaranteed.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog and $45 in money-saving coupons and free product samples, call 800-701-6159. That's 800-701-6159.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
And welcome back. Just some quick headlines for you to start. A rebound in business travel is bringing big business for Alaska Airlines. The airline is forecasting stronger than expected earnings this quarter. and has upgraded its full-year earnings. Alaska's CFO says leisure travel demand remains strong and corporate travel spending is growing. Home builder D.R. Horton raised its forecast for full-year revenue today, and the home builder largely caters to entry-level buyers looking for affordable price points. It was able to raise the average selling price per home to $380,400 in the second quarter. And the world's largest private equity firm has reported a 1% rise in its first quarter distributable earnings, and that's the cash used to pay dividends to shareholders. Blackstone says this rise was supported by growth in fee-related earnings like management and advisory fees. And staying with real estate right now, Americans are still dealing with a tough housing market as home sales fall and prices climb. The National Association of Realtors reported existing home sales fell to just over 4 million last month. And the median price of an existing home was $393,500 last month, and that's the highest March price on record, and an increase of nearly 5% from a year earlier. Home sales might not rise much higher as the Federal Reserve signals it won't cut interest rates anytime soon. Mortgage rates topped more than 7% this week, and this is the highest level since November. All right, some China-related stories right now. Wall Street is putting billions of dollars into blacklisted Chinese companies. This is according to a new report by the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. The congressional investigation found that Wall Street used billions of dollars of American retirement savings to buy shares in index funds that include more than 5 dozen blacklisted Chinese companies. And the probe focused on world's largest asset manager, BlackRock, and index provider, MSCI. And the investigation found that American financial institutions funneled $6.5 billion last year to 63 Chinese companies blacklisted by the U.S. Meanwhile, according to the Dutch, Chinese spies have been targeting Dutch and Western industries to strengthen its military. The Dutch Military Intelligence Agency, MIVD, shared details in its annual report. The agency said that China wants to be independent from Western knowledge and technology. It explained that cyber espionage is one of the ways China is obtaining this information. The first such attack that the Dutch publicly attributed to China was one from last year. Intelligence agencies say state-backed cyber spies had gained access to a Dutch military network. The Netherlands has joined the U.S. in its effort to keep advanced chip-making technology from China for national security reasons. And now we're joined here by NTD's Dave Martin. So the reason why I asked you here, Dave, is to give your insight on a very hot topic, and that's Caitlin Clark and the pay that she's getting. So she's a rookie with the WNBA, $75,000 salary per year. It's sparking debate over unfair gender pay. What are some of the main arguments here on both sides?
Yeah, of course, this is a very delicate subject, of course, to many people, because of course it does go on in some places of work. Now, it's easy to look at the average NBA player salary of just over $10 million, compare that to the average WNBA salary of just $150,000, and say there's a gender pay disparity. Now, the common argument I see is that the women work just as hard as the men, which I have no doubt is true. But on the other side, basketball is actually entertainment. I mean, it is hard work to be good, but in the end, it's entertainment. This isn't an assembly line process or something. I mean, putting the ball through a hoop doesn't create a product. I mean, it can draw a crowd, but that revenue then is going to be governed by supply and demand. I mean, you don't pay the same to see like an unknown comedian versus what you would see like Jerry Seinfeld or Dave Chappelle or something. And it's not like the reason there's a separate women's league is because men and women can't play together or something. The NBA has allowed women to try out in the past. Now, in addition to that, each league is really their own business, generates their own revenue, their own media contracts, their own ticket revenue. Now, the WNBA, though, they are much newer. I think they've been around 27 years. They're not nearly as financially successful as the NBA. They've been around since like the 1950s. Now, something tells me, though, that's about to change, though, with Caitlin Clark joining the league.
All right, just one more question here, because some of the players in the WNBA is asking for not the same pay as NBA players per se, but rather the same percentage of pay of NBA players. So, I mean, in that sense, I mean, is there an argument that there is, in fact, a gender pay gap here?
You know, you could make that argument on the surface because the split of the revenues between the players and owners in the two leagues is different. But now the NBA reported nearly just over $10 billion in revenue in 2022, and it's a 50-50 split between the players and owners. The WNBA, meanwhile, reported just $60 million during the same season. Now theirs is an 80-20 split with the owners getting the majority there, but there's a catch. Now the NBA actually owns the WNBA, and NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has commented on the finances in the past. He actually said in 2018 that the WNBA has actually never turned a profit and was in fact subsidized by the WNBA has never turned a profit and was in fact subsidized by the NBA. So although the women get a lower percentage of the pie, I mean, if they got the same percentage of the men, there might not be any pie to split.
Very fascinating. Always appreciate your comments here, Dave Martin.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. And before we go, I just wanted to let you know about an upcoming NTD special. Our own Kelly Wright traveled to Israel to speak to survivors and hostages' family members. They vow never to forget as they combat anti-Semitism and fight for freedom. Watch Hope for Israel, an NTD News primetime special on Friday, April 26th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time here on NTD. And thank you very much for watching today. That's all the stories we have for you. If you have any feedback for the show, please feel free to let me know. And don't forget, business matters, as always.